How much you get paid for that bout?
He probably got, I don't know, 5 million, 10 million. I really.
Oh, that's my kind of fighter. So I wouldn't even took 30 seconds. I just 10 seconds. I've been on the ground. Give me my paycheck. Where's the bank?
No, but man, if you want to be the greatest of all time, man,
If you pay me $5 million, I don't care about being the greatest. Well, what about Jackie Robinson? Did you have an opportunity to meet Jackie Robinson or play
Well,
with him?
I met him, but never spent any time. And the way I met him was on their way back from spring training, going to Brooklyn. He played in Greensboro against their local team. They would play all the way through it. So we would go and lean over the fence and meet him. I was playing semi-pro at 15 because I was in ninth grade, and but I had the skills to play up, and so that was how it was. But that's the only way that I got to meet Jackie Robinson and to see him play each summer, each spring when they'd come through, going to Brooklyn, play. They'd come through here, but I never had a chance to sit down and talk with him at all. But it was just a thrill, just to see him walk around on that field in Campanella and Junior Gillum. Because see, one of the other things you may or may not know is that there were several years where these guys would come through these baseball towns like Greensboro after the season, and they would play all-star games.
Yeah.
And I remember Gillum and Joe Black. I played against Joe Black with Satchel Paige in Patterson, New Jersey. The year I was 59, but they would come through Greensboro, Winston-Salem, Charlotte, and they'd play against Killebrew All-Stars or some white players, and that was very popular in the fall when them guys would in their seasons and come through with those All-Star teams. Matter of fact, I got to see Bob Gibson pitch in one of those All-Star games at the end of the season, and that was quite a thrill at that time. But I don't know. It's just baseball. I had seen the time when I had told my dad and those if I couldn't play baseball, I'd rather not even live. That's how much I loved baseball.
Yeah.
It was amazing. And my weakness overall was foot speed. I had everything, but couldn't run worth a nickel when it came compared to the other blacks.
Yeah.
See, they set a standard.
Yeah.
And I could outrun a lot of them other people, but them brothers, man, eat me up. But my batting average was always high. I mean, in the California League, I led the league over Joe Morgan and a couple of them guys that made it big. But I didn't run out nothing. But I know one manager I had, Edith Slaughter, I think it was. They couldn't understand, but why I wasn't quicker than I was. I could run good. I was no bad runner, but it was just that these guys stealing bases and going on, and I had to steal bases with smartness and stuff like that.
Yeah.
But raw speed, oh man, it would be hard. And because man, we had some guys that could go down that line, man. And they can't teach you to run. But then there were guys that made it of another color that I could outrun. But you had to be a little better than that.
Yeah.
And that type of thing. So, but I'm pleased with all of the other things that I've accomplished through baseball to help me develop, as a mature adult that went into other professions and succeeded. But the teamwork thing in baseball, and you can't. And one of the things that you got to always realize, you can't score unless you touch first base. You got to touch first base.
You mentioned in 1959 you were on the last All-Star team in Chicago.
Right.
Who were some of the notable players that was on that All-Star team?
Well, there's one player. Well, there were several that I can't always call their names unless I think about it. But there was a player who got left in Chicago.
Oh, Lord.
Because he didn't get... Well, what happened was, a lot of times he came there with a Negro League team that should play in Chicago, but he didn't get scouted like I didn't either. But because they had guys that hogged it. But his name was Ike Brown.
Ike Brown.
And Ike Brown ended up with Detroit Tigers. But when they didn't get a price for him, I forget the Negro League team, he came in there with Detroit Stars or somebody. They told him that the bus was leaving at 9 o'clock, and they left at 8. So he was stranded, and we brought him back to the East Coast. 2 years later, Ike Brown's in the major leagues with the Detroit Tigers. He and Gates Brown. See, Gates grew up in Chicago, and I played against Gates in the Carolina League. And Gates was the one we talked about all the time. And there was Ike Brown that ended up in the major leagues. There was several players picked up from that East-West game that went on and played in the major league. And I'm trying to think right off, but it'd take me too long to get the right ones.
Well, what was the pay like in Negro Leagues? How was y'all paid?
Okay, we were paid monthly, so to speak. But let me tell you, that's a good question you had. My salary for the Raleigh Tigers had bought a franchise in the Negro Leagues later on, and they paid me $150 a month whenever I got it.
Whenever you got it.
Yeah. Whenever they got around to it.
Is that called robbing Peter to pay Paul? That's what we call it today.
Yeah. Oh, yeah. Well, see, the rule was we got $2 a night. They call it eating money.
Okay, meal money.
Yeah. Okay, so $2 a day is what you got, plus your salary. Now, you get paid every night after the game, and I learned how to eat, save enough money to wash my clothes, because it took a dime to wash and 2 dimes to dry. So we would take 30 cents and set it aside whenever you wanted to wash your clothes traveling. Okay, so the 70 cents or whatever's left of the $2 out of 30 cents, then you would eat. And most of those meals back then was big meals at Soul Restaurants, man. 45 cents. During that time, you got black restaurants give you 2 pieces of meat and 3 vegetables. I mean, you ate good. And then, of course, you save something for breakfast. Now, what I learned to do was to sleep to 10, 11 o'clock when we got to New York and we were playing around New Jersey. we stayed at the Harlem Y, and you left every day around 2 o'clock to get to the site where you're gonna play around New Jersey for a night game.
Mm-hmm.
And so I would get me a bowl of cereal, and my dad told me to keep me some prune juice.
Mm-hmm.
He said you stay alert with your bowels moving. so you get you some prune juice and a bowl of cereal. And then for lunch, on your way out, you get a big slice of pizza. 15-cent slice of pizza. I think those things cost $5 now.
Yeah, close to it.
Yeah. But out of New York, there was best pizza sold on the street you ever seen.
Mm.
So we get that. Then we get another $2 after the game of that night.
Mm-hmm.
And then go have your good evening meal 12 o'clock at night, 11 to 12 o'clock at night, and you eat a good meal. But the pay was, during that time, was not your contract may be filled based on what kind of crowds you drew back then. Mm-hmm. Well, baseball had become so diluted in these towns that the crowds sometimes would cause you to get a half a paycheck and that kind of stuff. So you struggled, but the exposure and things that you went through was just good. But it wasn't nothing like the days when Jackie Robinson played. Because see, when Jackie came out of college, he was a three or four letter man out of UCLA. And I mean, and people would come see these guys play. And so they made good money back in those days. But I don't think those monthly contracts were anything absorbent. But I know that my contract was $150 in 1959. And I think the top salary was like $300 a month.
And how long was the season back then? Did it go from?
Well, the season started. See, a lot of guys in the Negro League, and it lasted up until I guess it folded. But way back then, most of those guys come out of Florida and working at hotels and resort areas during the winter. They start spring training because it was warm, and come Easter, the Negro League was playing. I mean, we were playing in the end of March, and so I mean, them teams come through Harrisburg early, going wherever they're going. And that particular year that I played, we opened up in Newark, and that was end of March. And on Easter, man, we had double hitters somewhere. So, and you ended around Labor Day.
Okay, September.
Yeah, September, the first Monday in September. That was a big payday for Negro League baseball.
Okay.
That Monday, and so that was a big payday. Learned anything about what did we need a Negro national anthem for? Son, you were because you could stand up to the white folks' national anthem.
Yeah.
Or you couldn't play in the major leagues because of your color. And that's why we had to start our own league, the Negro League.
Yeah.
That was our major league. So I mean, I can admire what you're doing because now you're talking about layers of parents that came along after these things occurred, and nobody told them about it. And see, then we were so sometimes jealous of each other's history of back when it was all black that we don't talk about it. We don't tell about it.
Yeah.
Because, I mean, this is the most, I had the most concern about what I've done because a couple of articles have come out about me when this Major League accepted the statistics from the Negro League. They asked me my comments and all that. And just like you said, a lot of people say, Ken, I've been around these people a long time. And they say, Ken, I didn't know you played in the Negro League, blah, blah, blah. Well, I guess it's my fault that I didn't tell anybody. But when I told people about the Negro League, you might get a little laugh, a little or something like that, but never no question about what it was like or whatever. Now, whatever I went through, it was a luxury for the old Negro League players. If you watch the pictures of the out of uniform pictures, man, them cats dressed up with nice clothes and hats. It was sharp. You know what I mean? It was big time Negro League baseball players. And it was like, you know, the days of Sugar Ray and Joe Louis and that kind of stuff.
What was the price to go to a game?
Oh, man, I think that Daddy would pay 25 cents.
Wow. Not today.
Not today. Not today. But, I mean, but now I remember one time going to see the Kansas City Monarchs against the House of David. That was 75 cents for adults and 50 cents for kids. That was top dollar then.
Wow.
And then of course things started going up like they are.
And then I hear they had y'all had a thing with the food out there. They barbecued and sold fish dinners, chicken dinners. Is that correct?
Oh yeah. And a jar of white liquor too.
Now, see, us city boys like me, we don't know nothing about no white liquor now.
Oh man, they call it corn. Whatever. But it was bootleg stuff. Guys that sell it. But I hate I mentioned that. But that was,
it's part of the history. We got to know it now.
oh yeah, man. You had the fish and chicken, and we used to raise money with another vegetable, another meat called chitlins.
Yeah.
They'd have a chitlin strut, and it's $1 a plate and stuff like that, and good old potato salad and pinto bean and collard green. And boy, you talking about selling. And you could, I mean, everybody ate, man.
Who was the cooks?
Huh?
Who was the cooks?
Oh, man, they'd have their wives and a little organization, pretty much like you see now. Okay. And then if you had a restaurant that knew how to cook in the field, but see, you had those concession stands with stoves and stuff in it, man. And them cooks and them women get back there and come out with them meals, man. But you had to stand in line like you do now. I mean, that kind of thing. And so you had outside the arena back in Negro League baseball with people selling stuff outside. Their specialties.
Yeah.
And you come up to the gate, and all around the stadium, man, you got people with their own, like you done sold booths. So that's where a lot of that food came from. And that before you get in there to them hot dogs and stuff like that.
Oh, Lord.
that was an afterthought, them hot dogs and stuff. And then people started getting upset that sold popcorn and hot dogs and stuff.
Mm-hmm.
And they got rid of those people who charged them so much for a spot to cook their own food and meal. But you would always had food and that kind of selling that around Negro League baseball.
What was the travel like in those days?
Okay, the travel was bad, not bad, but it was travel below the Mason-Dixon line, and you were glad whenever you went above the line.
Mm-hmm.
Travel was on a bus. Everybody had a big bus, like one of them old Greyhounds.
Mm-hmm.
They call them flexibles.
Uh-huh.
And they didn't have bathrooms on them, but most of our travel was at night after the game.
Uh-huh.
So you could pull on the side of the road and use the bathroom.
Yeah.
So travel was at night. You make sure while we playing, the bus driver go and fill the bus up and have it ready to go.
Mm-hmm.
He'd get his sleep while we playing ball, and then you go and you during the South you make sure you gassed up, and if you stop to get something, you had to be very careful because at night them places that were owned by white people
Mm-hmm.
wouldn't let you come in there as a gang. You come in there in pairs and stuff like that.
Yeah.
And with no hotels available to you.
Mm-hmm.
In some cities they had these tourist homes and that type of stuff.
Mm-hmm.
But usually in most of your good towns, you finish your game and you got to go somewhere, but you would go eat, and you had these soul or black restaurants and stuff that stayed open to about 2 o'clock in the morning.
Mm-hmm.
And so you made sure you didn't leave there until that place closed. And so based on where you had to go.
Mm-hmm.
And so we would do that. Now every now and then when you had to play in the same area, you find one of those tourist homes or YMCAs or somewhere to spend the night.
Mm-hmm.
But mostly you travel all night.
Mm-hmm.
And it was interesting because the manager would come down and see who's pitching, where his pitchers were going to pitch the next night and all.
Mm-hmm.
And they wouldn't let them, if they were a right-hand pitcher, you couldn't sit next to the window on the right side. If you're a left-hand pitcher, you couldn't sit next to the window on the left side.
Mm-hmm.
You sit in the aisle or over on the right side.
Mm-hmm.
Because they didn't want you to catch cold in your arm and that type of thing. So they would nurse you like that.
Yeah.
And it was interesting.
Uh-huh.
But during that time, a lot of times though, there'd be a lot of arguments between pitchers, and if you made an error back then, if you're a young player, man, you might get slapped.
Uh-oh.
And that's what one of them pitchers tell you. But travel was good. You didn't travel in no uniform or nothing. You never looked like a ball player on the bus while you were traveling.
Yeah.
You never. I mean, they were very sharp. You walked into the stadium, and that's the first time people knew you was a ball player. You didn't wear no cap, no baseball cap, and everything was in a bag, and you had on dress clothes all the time. You always looked the best when you went to a stadium. Nice shirt, pair of slacks, that type of stuff.
Now, do you have any of your Negro League uniforms?
No, I don't. I got one that I made up with Raleigh on it and the Raleigh cap, but it's not original.
So who kept those? The owners?
Yeah, Yeah.
Mm.
They kept them, pass them out every year. No, you didn't keep them. And a lot of times you got them cleaned as a unit
Mm-hmm.
and passed back out, that type of thing. But you turn those uniforms in, that kind of stuff. And then, see, during that time, you never thought about it being valuable. Like I should have took all kind of pictures because I couldn't afford a camera.
Yeah.
With such pays those 4 months that I traveled with him.
Uh-huh.
You know, because nowadays you got to show a picture or something for someone to believe that you did it.
Yeah.
So I didn't take more pictures, but a camera and traveling. Sometimes back then you had to put your film in and it'd take a week to get it back.
Yeah.
So that kind of stuff where you carried with you until you got somewhere where you're gonna be there long enough to have them develop.
Yeah.
But they had the best thing going for Negro baseball was the type of black papers and the reporters that we had back then.
Mm.
Those Afro, the Journal and Guide, and I guess there's a big paper out of Chicago, a black paper, and those writers and stuff kept up with Negro baseball just like the other papers did the other. So man, you got your picture in the Journal and Guide. Them guys was something else back in those days, and you need to do a history of those writers, black Negro League sports or black sports in general.
Yeah.
And they were outstanding. Blow it up, make it look good. I forget some of those guys' names. I was talking about them the other day. A guy called me, but there was several Hall of Fame black sports writers in those black papers back then. They were big time. And the New York, Chicago, Baltimore, those cities had all these writers, and they were outstanding. That's some history.
Satchel Paige, what was he like, and what was your relationship with him?
Okay, Satchel Paige was an old guy when I met with him, but our relationship was he was always like a star, but he was congenial and helpful. The contract was he pitched wherever we played. If it was every night, he'd pitch 2 innings. Okay. That was his commitment, so people would get a chance to see him and that type of stuff. But he was basically staying in shape to get that 5th year of Major League pension. Like 1 year, and he's hoping. And then several years after I played with him, 2 or 3 years later, if you remember, the Atlanta Braves picked him up, and he got his 5th year. Ted Turner picked him up for the Atlanta Braves.